Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Forever Rugby on Forever Sports. It is a Sunday night, and we've had a lot of rugby over the weekend, and very interesting results across the various competitions. If we're looking at mainly just for the Rugby Championship and the Currie Cup, which I suppose are the only two real competitions that are currently happening. But yeah, some very interesting sort of moments across the weekend, some very interesting moments across the week. But it is Sunday night. We're going to be sort of capping off the weekend, talking about what we've seen over the last couple of days, giving you a bit of a news update as to what's happening in and around the world of rugby and stuff like that. A couple of the talks of the town and stuff like that. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Rusty Erasmus situation, the fact that he's not currently with the Springboks. We're going to be talking about the future at number 8 in terms of our 8th man after we saw Jasper Wiese. And the headline of the video is we're talking about the Springboks thriving in a sea of hate, which I think is very much the case at the moment. So yeah, we've got quite a lot to talk about and stuff like that. And basically, the reason I really like doing these Sunday night shows is that we've all had a day. You know, we've all had a day to digest what we saw yesterday and what we've seen throughout the last sort of week. And it sort of gives you more sort of time to sort of be able to reflect. And I mean, look, things we say last night, we sort of say a lot of things in the moment, very sort of passionate stuff like that on the end of a very good 80 minutes of rugby or really bad 80 minutes of rugby. And sometimes, you know, a day later you come back and you can sort of retrospectively start looking at, you know, what were we talking about and where do we want to go and what do we sort of want to talk about and stuff like that. In terms of the current setup of the Springboks, in terms of the Currie Cup and stuff like that, just gives us a bit of time to sort of mull over things, really. And I really enjoy the Saturday nights because we do a lot of Q&As, you know. So if there's anything you guys want to talk about or anything like that, drop them in the comments and stuff like that. We can just sort of chat basically for the next hour and just chat a bit of rugby. But before we do that, as usual, we are sponsored by Manscaped, who are currently partnering the channel for the next month. So Manscaped is the #1 brand for the below-the-waist grooming of men. They have the perfect tools for your family jewels and are trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. They've recently launched in South Africa. I'm lucky enough to have gotten the latest Lawnmower 4.0 sent me over from Manscaped. This little bugger's got some really cool features, such as a travel lock, wireless charging, a little LED light so that you can see exactly what's going on, as well as the revolutionary skin-safe technology. So it doesn't matter what you are shaving or trimming, you can make sure you can stay nice and safe. They've also got a couple of attachment stuff like that, so you can do sort of adjust the length. So it's not a case of one size fits all. So you go and check out manscaped.com. You can use the discount code FOREVER to get 20% off as well as free shipping. I hope you guys have been going and checking it out. I hope some people are going and supporting them because, you know, the more they support them, the more they'll support us. And, you know, we can then hopefully give you guys some more and better content. Got quite a lot of interesting things in sort of the next couple of years that I'd really like to do and really sort of been brainstorming where this channel is going and what do we want to do with this channel and how I get the balance right in terms of sort of driving the channel, but getting in the fan opinion and making sure that it's not just because it's Forever Sports, isn't it? It's not the Steve show. So whilst I'm doing most of the content stuff like that, it's really good to see Lukanya coming on. You know, I want to try and get more people on the channel as well, and I want us to sort of be able to sort of guide us towards being the #1 rugby fan channel in the world. That's our goal. Well, the #1 sports channel in the world is the goal, but we're sort of making quite a lot of inroads in rugby, and we're going to sort of hopefully branch out to some more sports as well, because it is Forever Sports, not just Forever Rugby. But it's rugby that we've really sort of grown quite a big community. So, yeah, so some very, very interesting times. And we can talk about, you know, what we're going to do from the channel a bit later. But in terms of the rugby, let's get back to exactly what's going on right here, right now. So let's just sort of see who's jumping in the comments. Good evening, F and TSG. Hello, Mark, Julian, and Lee. How's it, Grant? Hello, Tion. Good to see all the regulars here. Nortelli, hello. Strues Bob says, "What's the of hate? They played well." We're going to talk about that. Escovia says, "Puma's gotten a 42-all draw against the Western Province, so yay." Yeah, I mean, giving the Lions, they're dangling a little bit of hope, and that we need a lot of results to go our own way. In fact, I'm going to get my maths out and sort of see what results will be needed for the Sigma Lions to trip into the semi-finals. This is not the time to hate the Boks. This is the time to cherish the Boks. They are a special bunch of players, Boks, right now. It'll be a game gone one day, as always, up and down in sports. 100%. I think that's probably what I want to sort of get to the crux of this evening and talk about the fact that we are in such a special generation of the Springboks and SA rugby in general. So let's sort of enjoy it. We should pull out of future events. I can't deal with the North. I live here. The arrogance is too much. Right, so when is the Forever Sports hoodie signed by Alton Yankees coming out? I tell you what, I would buy one if we could get that done. But we are doing a lot of work on potentially doing some branded stuff and a bit of some merch. Quite a couple of people in the last couple of weeks have talked about the fact that I never even really thought we'd have a demand just yet. I thought, when we got maybe a bit bigger and stuff like that, maybe people would be interested. But there have been a couple of people asking about some merch. So we are working on a few things behind the scenes. Hopefully we can make a bit of an announcement in sort of the next, hopefully the next week or two and stuff like that. But yeah, so do you think we can beat the All Blacks? I think we can beat the All Blacks. Whether we'll beat the All Blacks is very, very different. Tiz, if you want players on the show, I can help you with that. I know a lot of the agents. Yeah, well, that's what I want to try and get towards. It's been, the British and Irish Lions series was such a head down. Every day we were churning out video after video. We were in 2 different camps. There were just press conferences and media and stories. It was just so hectic. But now that that's sort of subsided a little bit, then yeah, as TSN, I do want to start getting more players on the channel. I do want to start doing more stuff. I want to start doing more sort of long-term and long-form stuff, like an hour conversation, just sit down and chat about that. But in terms of the rugby news at the moment, so the headline of the video was Springboks are thriving in a sea of hate. Now, the Springboks are a side that loves to prove people wrong. When you doubt the Springboks, if you put them in a corner, if you tell them that they're not good enough or whatever, that is where they thrive. That is where they really sort of come into their own. And let's sort of review the last sort of 2 years, where we had all that negativity throughout the World Cup of the kicking game or the style of rugby and stuff we played. And then we won the World Cup and we played a really nice final. And all that kind of went away. And we were happy. We were happy as Larry, and we were, celebrating our amazing side. And life was good. And then we had pandemic and stuff like that, and we didn't play the Rugby Championship last year because we weren't ready. And I think it was the right call. We had barely played any rugby. And then, they were told that we were being cowards. We were too scared. We knew we were going to lose and stuff like that. And then we had sort of this year in the Lions series. Now, I would say 95% of the press sort of sat there saying at the Lions, and I must admit, I think it was a very good Lions side. So I was quite cognizant of the fact of it was going to be a huge ask. I wouldn't say I backed the Lions as favorites, but I did sit there looking at that squad thinking that's a hell of a good squad. And if they get it right, they're going to be very, very difficult to beat. So the Springboks were kind of written off, and especially after a bit of a sketchy performance. I wouldn't say a sketchy performance against Georgia, a sluggish performance against Georgia. And so it was all about, well, that's it. They're going to go on and the Lions are going to cream them and take the series. And then they won the SAA game, and there was all talk about, oh, well, it's basically a test match. They're not using this, and that. Then we lost the first match, and everybody said, well, there it is. The Lions will. Sam Warburton said that he gave this box a 1% chance of winning the entire series, and then we did it. And yet, what's the reaction been since we won it? Has the reaction been congratulations on a team which hasn't played a lot of rugby, facing adversity, facing all the issues within camp, and beating the Lions, which is no small feat. New Zealand drew to them all those years ago. So it's a big thing to beat the British and Irish Lions. And yet all the talk was about the fact that it was a bad spectacle. It was doing badly for rugby. It wasn't going to promote the game. It was boring. The impact off the bench is wrong, and it's hurting players, and they've got to sort of looking at the subs, and all the sort of Lions legends are having a bit of a meltdown over the way Springboks are playing. And I can guarantee you right now, if the roles were reversed, if we had the Lions coming on with some big players off the bench and proving to be really physical, there would never even be that conversation. And then, so we do that, and then we beat the Argentina last night with 13 changes, by the way, 13 new faces in a 23. Just 10 players were the same from yesterday that were played against the British and Irish Lions in the third test. And yet you look at the comments and you look at the reaction, and it's, the kicking game is just so boring. I'm just so bored of kicking. Our wings don't get to do enough. That the box is nothing special. That this Argentina, it's Argentina. Why are you celebrating? And New Zealand will smash the box and stuff like that. And I think that's a good thing in many ways. For the Springboks, I think it's a good thing. I think for a rugby community, I think it's pretty toxic. And I think that, if you are something like that, if you're a Springbok supporter, look, if you're not a Springbok supporter and your coping mechanism is to slate us, great. But as a Springbok fan, if you're sitting there complaining about the way we play, you're sitting there complaining about the players that play, why? What's going on in your mind there? Like, and if you are one of those people, just maybe help me understand here. How are we still doubting a coaching setup that took us from 57-0 against New Zealand to winning the Rugby Championship, winning the World Cup, winning the British and Irish Lions series, making 13 changes, beating Argentina, tied on top of the Rugby Championship log? Where's your head at? Like what is causing that mentality? Why are we so obsessed with, we play a kicking game? Yesterday, we scored 3 tries, and none of them were rolling mauls. None of them were penalty tries, scrum penalty. None of them were scored by forwards. 2 of them scored by scrum halves, and 1 of them scored by a wing. And the 1 try, how can you? The try Apelele scored, and he got 1 ruled out. If that was the All Blacks, we'd be raving about that sort of try. A kick ahead, chased down by Eben Etzebeth, quick ball, a really good cross kick, good take from Apelele over, boom. Kobus Reinach on the counter attack. That's what New Zealand do. They soak up pressure, they snatch the ball up, they counter attack. We did that yesterday. Jaden Henson on the back of a storming run from Marcus Darden. Boom, sit down, a really good quick pass. A bit sort of Aaron Smith-like, not necessarily in the delivery, but in terms of the effect. From Mornay Hendricks are over. We scored good tries yesterday. And yet there's still this negativity about the tactical stuff like that. And I just don't understand why we are so fixated on the idea that when we play 12 tests a year, by the way, we come together and we play 3 tests in June, we play the Rugby Championship, we take a break, and we come back with 3 tests at the end of the year. You don't play a lot of international rugby. Now, if you're a football fan, for example, you'll notice that when you play international football, they have tactics and they have formations which suit being able to put a side together quite quickly and be able to be quite solid. And international rugby is very much the same. There are certain teams which play a lot more together in terms of the times of the year that allow them to string together the type of game plan. Or else there are there are nations, for example, where their local sides and their systems, for example, all encourage a very similar type of tactics or similar style of rugby. And so that then comes into the national side. I don't think we're the same like that. If you look at New Zealand teams in general, they all play relatively similar. New Zealand as a rugby brand across New Zealand with the All Blacks, with all the teams there, have got that mentality, that attacking mentality, that throw the ball around, the really powerful wings, and really good technically sound forward pack that have got decent hands. In South Africa, it's completely different. We had the Emirates Lions, who played a completely non-South African style of rugby for all those years. We had the Bulls, who have always played a very physical, very tight game. We've had the Western Province and the Sharks. The Sharks at the moment playing a very, very much tactical kicking type of game. And when you've got the Western Province, who somewhere in between. So, at the end of the day, for the British and Irish Lions series, we got a team together after 18 months and said, right, what can we do in 4 weeks that are going to beat the best of 4 nations? And that was what we did. Yesterday, we kicked a lot, but I don't think we had any aimless kicking yesterday. I thought the game management was superb yesterday. From Elton Jantjies and Kobus Reinach, we were in control from probably the first kick of the ball, really. So even when they had good moments, the game management was really good. The kick chasing was really good. Argentina couldn't deal with the high ball. So why wouldn't you keep going that? And, just keep using that tactic, keep trying to exploit them. And we did do that to really good effect. We won by 20 points yesterday. That's a thrashing. It is a thrashing. You have to say, if you lose 20-0, you think, oh, shit, we got a bit of a drubbing there. It's annihilation. It's not ridiculous scores, but 32-12 is a thrashing. It's a sound beating. It's 20 points. It's 4 tries difference. Not converted, but 4 tries difference. So I think that we just sort of, and the Springboks will ride it. They'll say, write us off. Don't believe in us. Tell us you don't like your rugby. It's fine. We've been told this all before. We know what we're doing. We know the coach is back. And it comes the same thing with the players. People can go after Damian Benson. People can go after Alton Yankees. People went after Trevor Nyakane. People went after who else has been targeted recently? Siakalisi coming into the Lion series was targeted. But at the end of the day, I think there's such a good mentality. There's such a good connection within that box squad. The coaches trust their players, and the players feel that trust. Alton Yankees will wake up this morning and see that lots of people don't like him. And Jacques Nienaber will sit down at breakfast and said, you were good yesterday. You did exactly what we wanted. You're an important player in our squad. You are valued here. All the players around him will say, we know what you bring to the table. And you can see that sort of camaraderie there, where they don't care what you're saying. Genuinely, they don't care what Fricky from down the road has got to say about you, because they believe in themselves. And it's that self-belief that continues to sort of just spring them from one thing to another. We might not win the rugby championship, but this team has already been a successful year. Just the British and Irish Lions, it's already been a success of a year. We would have to go and lose pretty much the rest of the rugby championship games for me to sit there and say, this gear's been a bit iffy. But if we beat Argentina, we beat Australia, even if we lose New Zealand twice, I will look at this year and think it's a success. Some of the comments saying, we'd love to see more technical analysis on the show. Yeah, I'd like to. The problem is it takes quite a lot of prep to be able to do it properly in terms of being able to show you, stills and video. We can't really show video. We can kind of do stills, but it takes a lot of sort of prep, and I'm only one man. And I'd like to do more sort of that kind of technical analysis with somebody else and be able to bounce off each other and talk about that stuff like that. So we are in those sort of discussions, but at the moment we're sort of predominantly a news channel, sort of putting that up, trying to keep you informed. And it's working. It's working. It's what kind of makes us a bit different. Do you think Argentina is better than Australia at the moment? I do. I definitely do. What the possibility of them giving the Lions saves? We'll talk about that in a minute. New Zealand will be a challenge. That's good for the box. Good night, F and TSG. If we doubt them against the All Blacks, they will play well. The Springboks have a we all need mentality, and I love it. You're 100%. Can you give your opinion on Quagga? I admire him is seen as a player that as an X factor, but enjoying him showing that he can do the hard work and hustle. That's another person that I could talk about in terms of the hate. I don't think we can beat the All Blacks. You guys have oh dear, I'm losing comments now. You guys have no idea. Around 2017 here in the North, they were talking about South African maybe being a second-tier nation. I know after like 1 or 2 bad years, the Lions know the real result. Build me on to the rugby version of ED, and Pichot is our Chamisa. It's so crazy to think that SA hadn't won any silver since 2009. Now Rassie Nunes have won 3 titles in a row, and there's still so much complaining. I'll put that on screen there so we can look at that. The bits can't stand strong SA. I'm just sort of going through this quickly. Get frustrated when I hear hate from the other nations. All Blacks are definitely playing their games against us in Australia. This is good for Box. Have faith. British were a country pushing for more and more subs over the years. The moment used against them, they started the crime. British are sour grapes. Agreed. So I'm just going to sort of really, really go through this quite quickly because obviously there's a lot to get through, which is fantastic. Keep bringing your comments in. Russia's risen, but I'll talk about Russia Rasmus now. As a box supporter, I definitely respect the All Blacks, but I think the SA public can sense blood in the water with the All Blacks. They're not the same team the last 10 years. Also think that. So I'm literally just skimming to sort of see what everybody's got to say. Yeah, so we'll talk about Rassie Erasmus. Now, this morning I put out a video, and it was titled Springboks said to be stripped of the Lions series title. And everybody just had a complete and utter meltdown about it. So basically, and I don't feel like I need to explain my editorial policy, but and especially because you guys, and this is the nice thing. The problem is I always have this conversation with you guys, who understand what I do, understand the channel, understand how it works. We are a news channel, predominantly, and like TS analysis, I'll send you an email tomorrow. We can work together on something like that. I have the software for technical analysis. There's a lot of stuff that goes and seen. Yeah, I'd like to do it more. Number one, in terms of technical analysis, I'm very, very, very green in terms of my technical analysis of rugby. You know, I've never really coached rugby at any level really. I mean, I've played it here and there, but not at a particularly high level. So, you know, I think that's sort of the problem with analysis, is that it comes with having a really, really good understanding of the game. Whereas I'm still very much a student of rugby. Like somebody like Lucanio, for example, he knows so much more about the game than I do. I'm just a fan that sort of watches one season, and I just share my opinion. You guys seem to like it, some people doesn't. That's fine. That's sort of where I'm at, which is why I don't do the analysis just yet. But I want to start getting into it because I really do enjoy sort of like doing football analysis. I do a little bit more of. But going towards this morning in terms of the video I put out. So as I said, we are a news channel. Literally, you look at our description and it says, for the fans, by the fans, bringing you the latest sporting news from around the globe. That's our tagline. And so busy. I mean, so it's not a clickbait title. The whole video was dedicated towards an article that has been released by the report saying that the consequences of the British and Irish Lions, well, the video about the British and Irish Lions refereeing could range from stadium bans, but there could be a potential scenario where this box could be stripped of their title. And then I went on to talk about that in the video. So basically, the situation is that Rassie Erasmus is not currently with the squad. So he has decided to stay with his family, and he did not travel with them down to the Eastern Cape. And he is not currently within the setup. You know, I'm sure he's getting feedback and he's providing feedback and stuff like that. But he was not there yesterday. He wasn't running water. He wasn't in the stadium. He was not there. And I think I think the fact that he's spending time with his family is probably sort of the excuse given. But they're mounting their defense. He's going to be represented by his lawyer, and they're getting ready to mount their defense against World Rugby, who are going to charge him with misconduct. Now, looking at some of the possible punishments and what World Rugby could impose on Rassie Erasmus and on SA Rugby, as him being the sort of affiliate director of rugby, are a range of different sanctions, which could include a stadium ban, a monetary fine, but could also include looking at a result, and they could cancel the result in the second test. And if they do, obviously mean you wouldn't have won the test. But they could also, in theory, according to their regulations, they can, in theory, move the result. So that's what we were talking about. And what I said in the video, as I said, I don't think it will happen. I said, whilst they've got the capacity to be able to do that, I don't think it's going to be. I don't think that'll be sort of the way they'll go. But there is that possibility, and there is that sort of conversation. And I think it's quite interesting that that's been brought up, and that there is sort of. I think it's actually important to say that can happen, that can be a possibility, because that then sort of puts the spotlight on the fact that World Rugby have the capacity to do that. Do we like that? Do we want World Rugby to be able to say retrospectively, we didn't like what you did there, we can then cancel that result? So I think it's quite important that the possible punishments are out there, because let's be honest, we don't know about them. They're in the law book, but I tried downloading the law book and it's like 500 pages. Now, I've gone through rugby law books. So I'm not going to go through it, blooming World Rugby's constitution and look at and try and nitpick every single small thing around there. So we were talking about the fact that is a possibility, but I said in the video that it probably won't happen. And that's the whole point. The whole point of this channel and the whole point of YouTube, and what it allows us to do, is do more than a 300-word article can. So we put up a title and we're going to say, right, this is what we're going to talk about. And then you must come and watch the video. So if you see the title and you don't watch the video and then you complain about clickbait, it's because you didn't watch the video. And I'm never going to say something which is not true. But 95% of our titles come from the report or the article we are actually talking about, which is very, very standard journalistic practice. I spent 6 years studying this. We're going to receive a master's in journalism and media studies. I've studied this whole concept and stuff like that. So if you want to come out and call me a clickbait artist, call me a clickbait artist. But if you actually watch the video, which is the whole point of it, you'll understand what we were saying earlier. So that is what could happen to Rassie Erasmus. I don't think it will. I don't think they will cancel the result. There's far too much opposition that could happen with that. So I don't think it's a possibility. But you know, what we do need to sort of look at is how do we respond to this, and what does that response then mean? So how does Rassie Erasmus go about this, and how does World Rugby go about this? Do World Rugby have the arrogance, I'm going to say it, the arrogance to go after SA Rugby for it? You know, do you think that they'll come out and say, we're going to go after you, we actually could cancel that match? Or will they sit there and say, you know what, we're just going to nail Rassie and try and sort of, because if World Rugby want to go to war against SA Rugby, then settle in. You know, we are one of the most valuable brands in the world. I think SA Rugby needs to be run a lot better, but the Springboks as a commodity are one of the most valuable rugby brands in the world. In fact, many people will say that we are, in fact, many cases and research would argue that we are the most valuable brand. So it becomes quite a big sort of clash of giants, really, where if you sort of start going that direction, SA Rugby sits there saying, you know, if we're going to keep doing this, we might walk away. We can walk away, and we've got a big pull. You know, and I think that it sets a very dangerous precedent. For example, if you go after Rassie Erasmus, you set the tone. So World Rugby have already said they want to review their policies regarding how they punish coaches. That was one of the things that came out in the initial statement that they released about it. And I think that we've talked about the fact, I think that they missed the point. I think they had an opportunity to come out and say, well, let's reform, you know, let's chat about this. You know, we don't condone what you did, but let's chat about it. But they didn't do that. They just sort of said, no, you're wrong, and we're going to change it so we can punish you sooner, punish you easier, and stuff like that. Which I think is quite poor from them. So I think Rassie Erasmus is busy mounting the legal defense, and when it comes to actually sort of charging him and sanctioning him and what this conversations will be, number one is they have to prove that he leaked the video, because that's a non-starter. If they sit there saying, if Rassie Erasmus and them say, well, we didn't leak it, it wasn't us, maybe you guys leaked it, for example, or somebody else leaked it. If they can't prove, because it wasn't addressed to the public, you know, they mentioned, well, maybe it will go out there, but they never said this is to go out there. The plan is to release this to the public. So first things first, they have to be able to prove that he actually leaked it. And if they can't, well, that's the entire story done. You know, we can just brush it under the carpet because you can't prove it. If they can prove it, then they have to sanction him. And what they do and how they sanction him will set a very, very important tone going forward. You know, if you're going to come out and you're going to give a stadium ban to the current World Cup winning coach, not that he's in the coaching role anymore, and say to one of the biggest names, probably the biggest name in World Rugby right now in many ways, definitely on sort of the current matters, you're going to ban him for a year. I don't think it's going to go down well. And I think that'll cause quite a lot of friction. Can you imagine if Eddie Jones, for example, got banned for a year? If Warren Gatland got banned for a year? If back in the day, if Steve Hansen got banned for a year? So it's a huge ruling. And this is why we sort of had quite a few videos about it, talking about how far will they go? How much will they how much are they willing to try and lose to try and make the statement? And I think that the video has been a masterpiece, because whatever way it goes, it'll be huge for World Rugby. You know, they're now sitting at a crossroads where what the decision that they do and what they sort of impose on Rassie Erasmus, it's them taking a position. It's them saying, this is how we feel about the situation. This is what we're going to do. This is the kind of organization we are going to be at. So I think the right thing for them to do, in my opinion, would be to hand them down a monetary fine and say, do not do it again, or we will do this. and say that they had constructive conversations. Rassie has, if he's found guilty and that he leaked it, Rassie has acknowledged that it's not the right platform and that we will take steps further to make sure that that type of thing doesn't happen again. However, we are happy with conversations and we want to look at reforming and create these open lines so that coaches and referees and World Rugby can have greater clarity, and the fans can have great clarity whilst not compromising the integrity of the officials, of the coaches, and of the unions. That's what they need to do. That's what they've got to do. If they want to try and sort of maintain a bit of integrity and support, that's what they've got to do. You know, they've got to say, right, well, you know, you can't do that, which is fine, you know, but we're willing to sort of listen to it. You know, it's a bit like, you know, when for example, like fans protest against a stadium, a club or something like that, and you know, they sort of maybe riots and stuff like that, and they sit there saying, listen, we will not condone violence. We're not condoning the way you're doing stuff like that. We understand you're unhappy, so we're going to punish you for that. But let's have the conversation. How do we avoid this in the future? So that's why I think it's just a very interesting time in terms of what's going to happen moving forward. So TAS Analytics says, I can't see it being anything more than a hefty fine. I think it's anything more than that will put World Rugby in the social media spotlight and they'll be eaten alive. I think they're already under a lot of pressure at the moment. Kurt Dixon says, so is World Rugby one thing and the unions that make up the rugby nations another? Well, you've got all sort of different sort of organizations. You know, you've got SANZAR, which operates within World Rugby and is made up of South Africa, New Zealand, Argentina, Australia. You've got, you know, your Six Nations clubs and stuff like that, all within that. So there are sort of different sort of groups, I suppose, but it all falls under the World Rugby umbrella. So that's why, for example, like test windows are World Rugby test windows. So that's where like the issue, like if, for example, you were to leave World Rugby and say, you know what, up yours, we're not going to play World Rugby, then legally, for example, players cannot leave their clubs during international windows to play for the Boks, because, you know, they're not sanctioned. It's not a sanctioned World Rugby event. So if the Springboks decide to leave and they want to say, right, we're going to play 3 matches against New Zealand in February, you know, all the players overseas and players over here are like, they're under contract. We're not releasing them. It's not a test window. It's not part of World Rugby because they're part of World Rugby. Therefore, we won't release you. We won't release our players. There can also be, for example, you know, situations where being a player within a league which is sanctioned by World Rugby, as all major leagues are, you might not be allowed to play, for example. So if SA Rugby leave, then, you know, Currie Cup, for example, those players wouldn't be affiliated with World Rugby, you know, indirectly. But if you're playing in Europe, for example, they are, like a top 14, stuff like that. They all fall under other unions who are part of the SA of World Rugby. So World Rugby can then say, if after Clark you go and play for the Springboks and they've left World Rugby and they're not part of it, we will not allow you to play for Sale Sharks. Very, very unlikely, but we saw these sort of things with the Super League last year in football, and FIFA and UEFA willing to say, well, it's fine, we'll sanction you. If you want to do that, you can't play in world tournaments and stuff like that. You can't play for your national team. So that's sort of the worst case scenario. And I don't think we'll get that far. I think that it will be quite a mundane sort of very nothing to write home about punishment, and we'll move on. And I don't think we'll have another. I don't think we'll have another incident like this. But it's just sort of a bit of a moment where it's just highlighting that we've sort of been in a bit of a bad trend, and we need to say, okay, now change it. And these sort of things happen quite often. Right, Stephen Rowan saying, what happened to the new lawyers that the Sharks equity guys promised? I mean, as far as it could happen, there could even be consultations. Fricky Erasmus will be representing Rassie. He's a family friend or close friend or something like that, since he's been his lawyer for a long time. So that's his legal reputation at the moment. Carter says, you guys don't have an idea that English are extremely jealous that arranged a parade in London thinking they'd won the World Cup finals. What's the World Rugby court like? Had a case like this transpired? Not to my knowledge. I've never really seen something like this go. Not to this scale anyway. Brent Tyler says the English are the best at losing, always sitting with egg on their face. The thing that, though, while the Boks are a big brand, they aren't as big as all the other ones put together. So World Rugby might try to appeal to the others. Yeah, but then it comes a bit of a power struggle, you know, because if World Rugby, for example, if other unions don't like it as well, And if just the Springboks walk away, it doesn't impact them. But if the Springboks walk away, another couple of unions go, maybe we actually also do it. Then suddenly becomes quite a big sort of power struggle. When World Rugby becomes a story, we're in the shit. 100% agree. We shouldn't really be talking about governing bodies. Can I ask if they ban Erasmus? Can't we bring the old dog Jake White from the Blue Bulls so I can help Rassie as director of rugby? I'm praying for Rassie Erasmus. Well, I mean, in theory, the coaching staff, I don't think would have to change. For example, yesterday we had the game. There was no Rassie Erasmus. He is director of rugby, so he won't have to leave his role. They can't tell SA Rugby you have to fire him. He just can get stadium bans, for example. He can't be involved there. But the coaching staff, I think, will remain the same. Jacques Nienaber is the head coach at the moment, so that won't change. Mark Shinley says Owen Farrell still upset enough to declare UK Customs 2019. Could Rassie take World Rugby to court if he is sanctioned? I don't think he can take World. I don't know if you can go to the Court of Arbitration in Sport. That's always usually the next one up. I don't know if they've got grounds and stuff like that. You're asking the wrong person about that. I think the English has taken too many L's in recent times. Rugby World Cup, Heroes, British and Irish Lions. So the Rassie video is the straw that broke the camel's back. I mean, I don't necessarily think it broke the rugby back, but I think a lot of it is just sort of, there's been a lot of coaching frustration about the lack of accountability that the officials have, and the lack of sort of conversations and transparency between coaches and referees in terms of being able to say, we're not happy. Can we have this conversation? What is going on? Because we can't have a situation where a referee comes in, referees the game, goes away. There's no sort of feedback. They come in a week later, they referee the game, they go away. We've got to start having a bit of a conversation and build that relationship where you can have feedback, where you can have feedback sessions, where you can access the officials. And it's not necessarily to say that it's there to berate them, but you want to understand the game better, and maybe the way that you are coaching it and the way that you're interpreting the rules are different to the way that they are officiating it. So that's how we need to sort of progress and have that sort of two-way street. Because sometimes it can be a genuine conversation, Our interpretation of the law is that, and they'll say, no, we interpret it like that. And they go, oh, okay, well, now we know. So we can do it like that. Because the way a law is written out is not necessarily not everybody will sort of approach that law in the same way and sort of interpret it. I mean, obviously, in theory, at the very crux of it, that's the law. But in terms of what they look out for, in terms of those infringements and stuff like that, can differ. World Rugby is corrupt as hell. Just look how the opaque and questionable the awarding of the next Rugby World Cup was handled. Agreed. If Sari could get the All Blacks to walk away with them, then World Rugby would have to capitulate. It's all speculation though. Yeah, I don't think we will leave, but those would be the extremes. If they wanted to get extreme, those would be the extremes that we then do. Who do you think would be the second line for the fly position behind Pollard? Well, currently it's Alton Yankees. At the end of the year, then Johan Goosen will be in the group, I'm sure, and sort of fighting it out. Is the team going to release on Tuesday like last week? Yes, it will be. I've got the media schedule, so there will be press conferences tomorrow and press conferences on Tuesday. And the press conference on Tuesday will be the team announcement at about, I think it's 2:00. So we'll obviously have a video as soon as that is announced. I thought there was stuff in the background for the ref. No, don't all coaches write up reports and how refs perform affects the games they get? Could be wrong. But yeah, no, there is a system in place. I mean, there's a system in place in all things. I mean, I remember even at university level, for example, at the end of a match, as the captain, you do a bit of a report and you sort of give your feedback. But I think that the frustration from Rassie Erasmus and stuff like that, and in general, is that the system doesn't really work, and that they want more access. They want to be able to have conversations and get more clarity than just simply saying, we thought Maurice Janko was a tosser this weekend, we don't like him. To be able to say, so I'm not sure why we're getting penalized for these, and then to be able to say, this is why. And I'm not saying that every single week there needs to be a sit down, you need to watch the entire 80 minutes and say, this is why you're wrong, this is why you're that, and stuff like that, but just more conversations so that we can just sort of have that sort of level of transparency, because you don't want to become a sort of us versus the refs sort of, very big grudge between them. But we also can't move towards a situation where it's there's no accountability and stuff. So have these conversations, be a bit more transparent, and hopefully it'll all improve. Carl says, you guys aware Great Britain may lose their 4 by 100 million on the positive for a banned substance? Yeah, I did see that. Wilmam needs to go and retire. He's the British version of old African leaders who are power hungry and stay in African power, 100%. What do referees do when it's halftime? Do they go to a room and chill and look at some of their calls they might have missed? I've actually got no idea. I think they talk about, I'm not sure they look at calls, but I think they'll probably sort of just talk about what they need to look out for and some of the things they're picking up. I know football referees, for example, get feedback at halftime. I watched documentaries about that, where they do sit there saying, listen, that offside goal that you awarded was on and stuff like that, which obviously plays in the mind. But I'm not quite sure what the rugby referees do. At the end of the day, the video shouldn't have influenced the ref when we are at this professional level, 100%. Sometimes one has to do something radical when the old order thinks they have too much power. After the Argentine game, we will be rested for 3 weeks before we play Australia, maybe because of isolation. We've got quite a long time before we're back in action. So that's what I'm interested to see the TV put out next week. The playing fields have not been leveled for ages. We all know that without me quoting the many examples, they're just bitter that someone had the balls to call them out, says Rich. And GVR from Royan says, but really think refs should get sanctioned the same way players or merit and demerit system. Maybe Timo dodgy thing sometimes. Look, I mean, referees are sanctioned. I mean, we all saw that Bryce Lawrence was after that performance. But, and obviously you're not going to sit there releasing the refereeing report. But the problem is that all we see is the fact that we see a referee performance which we don't like, and then a week later we see him with the whistle in the hand. And I think that, especially in South Africa, in the Currie Cup the last couple of weeks, I think the refereeing has been atrocious. Really, really, really bad at the moment. Lots of things. I don't know if it's just a case of a disconnect in terms of how we understand the laws, how they're understanding the laws, how they're applying it, whether it's an adjustment period. I don't know. But there have really been some very, very poor officiating recently. And if you guys have followed me for enough time, you will know that I hate talking about officials and criticizing officials. I think it's just far too easy to, say that we lost because of officials. And I'll very, very rarely, if ever, say that. But I do think that the standard of referee needs to improve quite quickly, or else. And how do we do that? How do we sort of move towards that? Unfortunately, I can't answer that question, but that's something that World Rugby needs to look at. Hansi Lartkan says, I shiver when I read a comment from Alan Rowland that we cannot have this happen as they are battling to get top referees. So what he says, a professional paid for as a job may not be taken to task. I mean, I know it's a very, very difficult situation because that's what they're saying. They're saying that if referees can be criticized, or they can be sort of chastised, if people can hate them so much, who would want to be the referee? And there's a fantastic football documentary called Kill the Referee, which is brilliant. It talks about the pressures of being a high-profile referee. But in many ways, I think that World Rugby obviously have to protect them, but I think we can protect them better. And I think the more sort of transparent you are, and you can come there and say that that we've had a review, we've had discussions, stuff like that, and that there is a process going on all the time. It kind of sort of just puts us at ease. So it's not just a case of, well, we know he was bad, and World Rugby come out saying, don't you question our referees. If we are confident that there is a review process and that it is being done, and that referees are always being looked at, then we will be less likely to sort of go after them. But at the moment, we don't really know what the process is. Even now, sort of, we only starting to realize that the coaches are actually having these conversations before and after matches and stuff like that, but that's still not really working. If Nick Berry refs an Australian game, we will lose both games against Australia. Speaking of refs in Currie Cup, didn't we have some of the best in the world? What happened to skills transfer? I know we did. I mean, you think of Jonathan Kaplan and all the chats back in the day. We're going through a bit of a transition period, I reckon, with referees. We've had a lot of referees suddenly sort of jumping up, and there are some very good ones coming through. I'm a really big fan of Amy Barrett-Turon. I think that she's got a lot to learn, and she'll get there. But I think that she's quite a promising referee coming through. There's a couple of them which are quite good. But the problem is at the moment, there's so much attention being paid to them that it's just a difficult time. World Rugby is a stingy kid running with an autocratic version of management, always wanting my rules. If they come to Africa, we'll give them Ubuntu and get beaten with a Shambok. I love Oz Chocolate Biscuits. Good for you. Did you see that the former Lions player said that you shouldn't sub a player if they aren't injured? Yeah, so I mean, they were talking about the idea, and we talked about this a little bit on Friday, that the Lions players are talking about the fact that the bench is being used to create dangers, and they say that it's only a matter of time before somebody gets killed, which I think is a little bit dramatic. I mean, we've seen very few career-ending injuries in a very long time, let alone any deaths and stuff like that on the side of the field. I mean, in fact, in like football, you've seen a lot more sort of heart attacks, stuff like that. But yeah, so I think they're missing the point. I think that it's the idea of substitutes coming off the bench are always going to change the game. And I know what what they're getting at, the fact that they're saying when they're loading bench with really big players who are coming on and hitting tired players and stuff like that. But I also think that this whole idea of you can only sub a player when they're injured becomes very, very dangerous. And I don't think player welfare, if you had to sit there stacking the pros and the cons, I don't think you can find more pros for a system like that than cons, where you might not be fully fit, but you have to play through it, where you can't go off because and you sit there thinking, I can probably play through this, but I'm a little bit comfortable. So then you play it, boom, you snap a hamstring, or maybe you're that little bit you don't realize the extent, but you know that it's such a big thing for you to be subbed, for example, that you don't want to risk it. So I think that becomes a bit of an issue. And, players maybe not being fit enough to play 80 minutes. How do you bring players back from how do you get players back and playing? If you can't bring them on for 20 minutes, for 30 minutes, or 40 minutes, what is the solution? That you must just start them and they can only come off if they're injured. So how do you negotiate that? Somebody who is building at match fitness, and you're thinking, well, you can probably play 30 minutes, but you have to be able to play rugby to get back to those fitness levels. You will never be rugby fit without playing rugby. And if you have to play 80 minutes every single time, it becomes a massive ask. And I think that we could actually probably have more injuries with that system. So I don't think that system benefits players at all in any way. Tim Van Berg says Amy Barrett is phenomenal. Law includes principles and precedent. I don't know how they can sanction Rasmus, not Gatlin. The only difference between the two is that Gatlin's criticism was shorter. Yeah, it wasn't quite the same. I think Rasmus was a lot worse. FIFA Dude says Amy is coming to my school to talk about women refereeing in sport. We need more of them. Argentine refs, are there any? There are a couple. I would really like to see Ras Bacana feature in the Springbok team in the upcoming years. Pace. He's got so much pace. Mark Julian Lee says, I like Amy Barrett. Bring Rustavenga to the World Cup over Uwan Morris Jonker. Grant Swart says that if we criticize refs, then no one would want to do the job is nonsense. People criticize Alton all the time and he still wants to play for the Boks. Very good point. Guillaume, how's it, Guillaume? You well, chap. I reckon that the Boks will put any referee team under pressure, no matter nationality. Watch down under. If the Boks win, which they will, it's officiating will be chucked as an excuse. Fitter players and fresher players is more safe. They're referring to us, I know it's a salty British man because of their powerful balance. Kurt Dixon says, don't you think there's more risk with a tired player? Well, it's 50-50. What's more risk? Somebody who's maybe not 100% trying to push himself for 80 minutes. Somebody who's fresh coming against somebody that's tired. I think the whole point of subs, and obviously you can't do it for everyone, but there are 8 subs. You can replace more than half your team. So if you'll have games where at 50 minutes you're absolutely buggered, you're dead on your feet. You'll have games where you can get up to 75, 80 minutes and still be all right. But now if we move towards the system, you're not in that situation where you can't. You could be 50 minutes dead on your feet, having a really, really big first half. For whatever reason, maybe you got more runs, maybe you had more tackles to make than normal and stuff like that. And now what? You must continue playing. So as I said, I think there is a certain amount of obviously a fresh player can be dangerous to a more tired player. But I think if you had to sit there and build a pile and say, right, what are the pros, what are the cons, build a list. I think there are a lot more cons to removing substitutes than there are pros. Pelican Rasta with Aussie twang gives me pain. We don't mention. Substitutes are actually safer. Tired players result in poor technique and injury, so the opposite is in fact true. There's no evidence of any injury caused by fresh players opposing tired players. Well, I'm sure there'll be lots of studying doing into it now, so we'll wait and see. And if there are, then we can have the conversation. But I don't think there's a big need for it now. if we make it a rule and you have to look injured to get subbed, how does that work? Like, do you send a medic assessment for 10 minutes and start playing, or just waste time? Well, that's also sort of the next thing. How do you sit there and sort of what extent do you then decide it's injured? And then do we have people saying, oh, he's injured, and then it's like, oh, he wasn't really injured. Maybe we need a ref bomb squad, can't keep fitness focused for 80 minutes. Cheers, Gilm. They always change rules on SA benefits. Heinrich Brizot was a classic example. Yep, true. This attempt at changing the rules around subs is blatantly an attack on SA Rugby. They started the conversation after you won the World Cup, and now they bring it up again after we beat the Lions. Will Mornay start before Alton's second game or not? I don't know about this weekend. I'm interested to see what they do. Will they bring Andre Pollard back in? Do they give Alton another go? Do they give Mornay Steyn a go? Do they, I'm very, very keen to see the type of team we put out this weekend. Do we go back to our first team because we think Arsenal are going to respond? Do we back this side again and give them more opportunity and try and keep building depth? Grant Swart says other teams always talk about how big the box are, but we are the same size as everyone else. Others don't have the biltong power. They mistake that for size. It's very true. If you look at like man for man, I mean, Brody Retallick is not exactly a bloody midget, is he? Sam Whitelock, RDC. I mean, think about Kieran Reid, Richie McCaw, and Jerome Kano. They had that as a loose trio, but we're big. Come now. I believe it is the coach's responsibility to see whether the player is fit and ready to play 60 or so minutes and make subs where they need to. Criticism is essential for progress, says Gary, but it has to be unemotive, instructive, and accurate in order to improve. Referees are reviewed by World Rugby, but the process is not transparent or clear. And DT says Sam Warburton was one who made the dying quote. I don't think he meant to attack SA. He's pretty class and was the first on Sky Sports to emphasize SA. Yeah, I've got a lot of time for Sam Warburton. Very hard on the sleeve, but he's willing to listen to people. They must start ESCOM next week. I have a concern. I was watching Creel trying to replay through our defensive system. It honestly didn't work. Well, we didn't score a try. So harsh to say it didn't work. Bring in the other half for the first team that didn't play. Going to need some game time for the All Blacks. I mean, I think the couple of players, I think Malcolm Marx is overdue a start. I think Trevor and Vincent are probably overdue a start. I'd probably go Malcolm and start in ahead. The problem is you go Marco Verstappen ahead of Sia Khaleesi because you don't really want to put Sia in the 7. Unless you sort of, so I'm interested to sort of see how they go about it. But maybe you give Sia a break. He's definitely freaking deserved it. I expect a more running game this weekend. The kicking game is not enough to beat the All Blacks. To be honest, I don't think a running game is enough to beat the All Blacks. I don't think if you sit there trying to play champagne rugby and if you spill a ball on the attack, then suddenly we're going to freaking see them on the counter attack. So we've seen what has worked before against them. Let's leave it up to the coach to decide how best we can beat them. Afikile says, should we not change it to suit the player more because we cannot force him to read the game the same as Lucanio? Hope they keep Visa playing some of those soft skills you mentioned. There is something about him worth developing. 100%. He had the best game in the box shirt yet yesterday, and we saw yesterday where the sort of the hypes come around. Just to add to Grant's look at the most packs. They're always more weight than us. They often are. Sam Warburton is a good guy. John L says, when are the All Blacks going to start a new young squad and begin new and leave all their older players? Probably when they start losing. The Argentinians are giants as well. Lavanini is a monster. When was Rusty found guilty? Wait for the trial. Innocent until proven guilty. Just to add, most packs, I think the kicking game is the way to beat the All Blacks. I think if we put a kicking game like we did yesterday, definitely. Views on SA fitness. All Black fans believe the way to beat SA is to run us off our feet. I think we're pretty fit these days. I think maybe a couple of games ago we might not have been fit, but I think that we'll probably be pretty fit at the moment. So I don't think that'll be a massive thing. But yeah, I don't know what we're going to do against the All Blacks. I think you can't and you can't sit there saying for sure, well, we can't beat them with a kicking game. You don't know. They've been beaten before. New Zealand are not unbeatable, especially this New Zealand side. They are not unbeatable. Fiji got decimated from them, but they scored tries. Argentina beat them last year. Australia got hammered, but in the first half, once again, they scored a couple of tries. And you can see, I don't look at this New Zealand side and sit there thinking, shit, they just don't concede points. We can't score tries against them. Yes, they're full of tries, but they're always full of tries. And it comes down to your sort of defensive system. And I think Australia's defensive system was open season on Saturday, where they just kind of had pointsmen saying, you want to score there, you want to score there, what do you want to do? But that New Zealand side can concede. It concedes points. It concedes points. Let's go look at the All Blacks results, shall we? Over the last sort of year. Okay, so let's go. So we're looking at now at okay, so let's look. So first game 33-25, okay? So they conceded they conceded 25 points. Second game they conceded 22 points. They humiliated Tonga. But against Fiji they conceded 23 points in the first game, 13 in the second game. Last year the Bears Cup 16-16. Their best one was 7, but before that and 5, 24 against Australia, but they conceded 25 points when Argentina beat them. You know, so I think you look at that, and they're conceding more points than they have in sort of previous years. You go back at the Investor Rugby Championship 2019, they conceded more than 20 points just once. In the Investor Rugby Championship, where are matches against them? Yeah, 16-16. So they didn't concede points back then. So I think that if and even as you sort of go back here, you know, that 36 points we scored against them back in 2018 was a bit of an anomaly. In 2018, when they beat France, they conceded 11 points, 13 points, 14 points. New Zealand's defense, you know, has always been really, really good of late in sort of the past. And it's funny how it's often that defense which sort of always makes the attack look so good. But they're conceding points. You know, if Fiji can score, you know, 23 points against them, we can do that. If Australia can score 25 points and 22 points in 2 matches, we can do that. The question is, can we then keep them down to scoring just 22 points? So I think we can beat the All Blacks. I don't think that there are the All Blacks of the old, where we sat there thinking it's just such this unbelievable big task. I think we're quite competitive against them. I think it will be a game of whoever pitches up on the day can do the job. Going back here, Visa playing so well, wondering what when Vermeulen will come in. That's the game that they're best at. We need to stick to our strengths. Look forward to Mpimpi versus Severis. Imagine seeing a bulky pack of Nkane, Marks, Koch, Etzebeth, Diallo, Khaleesi, Vermeulen. Visa, I don't think we'll ever see Vermeulen on the number 7 again. If we can beat New Zealand, we'd be unbeatable, unstoppable. King Lesotho and Nigel Rassi. I think our best chance is playing a defensive kicking game and then scoring off mistake. This is our best chance. Hansi says every year it's the same thing. A bunch of S supporters who tell us that the All Blacks will run over us, and then they never do. The New Zealand games are going to lead to so much comments about SA. I feel for some that are looking at this to see if SA deserve to be world champs. I know. I mean, I saw somebody today. Oh, you're lucky to be world championships. What must we do? I never understand that. When people sit there saying you are lucky to have won the World Cup, what must we do? It's not our fault you buckled against England. We didn't buckle against England. You did. So I can never understand the argument. You stuffed up. You lost. We then beat you. So when they're like, oh, but if we had beaten them, well, you didn't. So what are we talking about? Greg Evans said, I think we are probably the only team that can beat All Blacks. They don't look as good as their team a few years ago. Grant Swart says, I was not overly impressed with the All Blacks. They look vulnerable against a young Oz team. New Zealand always look great against weak sides. I don't think Ori is really the answer at lock. I hope Arches returns soon. Mix it up, play to our strengths. All the key reasons London want Foster to get sacked. Also would like to give Speckman a go from the bench. Can't wait to see where the Springbok progression will go, says Courage. I read that now's the foundation to build on. DT says, have you seen the stat that in the last 10 games, SA conceded 4 tries and next was New Zealand with 15? Well, exactly. We don't concede points, chaps. We don't. And New Zealand are conceding points at the moment. They are conceding tries. So, not saying that means we're going to beat them, but I wouldn't write us off quickly. We now have the conditioning to match them for a whole 80 minutes, but playing them twice is really hard. Look, I don't actually expect us to go over there and beat them twice. Definitely not. It's a huge ask to go and play 2 away games. If they are away, they might be on neutral grounds, which will help us. But it's still a big ask. It's still a huge ask. But it's possible. And I think that, you know, as I say, I think that for me, the All Blacks have lost a little bit of that aura. The All Blacks of 2011 through to sort of 16, 17, you sat there thinking, Sherbet, these guys are really, really good. But I think the British and Irish Lions beating them and drawing the series suddenly said, maybe we're into a new generation. And then when we beat them in 2018, after the humiliating victory a couple of years ago, then suddenly you sit there thinking, well, maybe they're not all that. And then we drew to them a year later. Argentina beat them last year. Australia drew to them last year. So I think that New Zealand will always be sort of heralded as that massive, incredible union, but it's not the New Zealand of old. It's not the most dominant New Zealand team we've ever seen. So I look at that loose trio, and it's not Jerome Kano, Richie McCaw, and Kieran Reid. I think their locks are fantastic. I think we can match their front row. I think our loose trio is probably better. 9, 10. It's whoever's on the best of the day. I mean, Aaron Smith is world class, as is Faf de Klerk. Andre Pollard is world class, as is Rishi Mwanga. But after that, centre pairing, I reckon we probably got the better centre pairing. Wings, it's a big competition. Sevi Reece versus Mapimpi. Colby's probably got the edge. Damian McKenzie's a phenomenal player, and then you've got the Barretts coming off the bench. It's a really good team. I think it's going to be a really good match. But I don't see why people are sitting there saying, we can't beat them if we do this. We can't beat them if we do that. Let them go. Let's have a go. Why not? Why not is what I say. Rudy Reese says, I honestly think this is one of the best years for us to give them a massive run for their money. Just wish our games went all away. Recently, we have no issue beating New Zealand away, but we struggle when we play them at home. Well, we're not playing them at home, so you got a good point there. What if we beat them 60-0? What will happen? It will be the biggest lose ever, and New Zealand will crumble. We can wish, can't we? Well, I mean, it would take one of those sort of games. But this is also the 100th game. And if there's ever a time where the Springboks often sort of punch above their weight, it's when there's a lot of significance on the game itself. Greg M says, I think New Zealand front row is too inexperienced. Centers, the All Blacks front row is weak. The Wallabies had the upper hand until Slipper went off. Exactly. So I think we can pile into them. New Zealand play a great style and they deserve respect. We have to disrupt their game and confidence before, which we have done before. Kirk says Visa was huge. Surely more than capable of replacing Vermeulen, who then, when he hangs up his boots, I think it could be sooner rather than later, to be honest. New Zealand's lost to Ireland twice in the last few years. Agreed. Good point I meant. And recently to Argentina for the first time. Yep. All Blacks need Scott Robertson. Maybe. I can't believe he still hasn't got that job. I see he's signed another extension at Crusaders. I can't believe he still got that. As Liam said, it's funny how we won the Rugby Championship, World Cup, British and Irish Lions Series, and they still consider us the underdogs. Yeah. Paulson Dupree twins not playing. Well, we saw Dan on Saturday. Didn't do much. It's just difficult to get into that loose trio, to be honest. I don't think... And I think that Kwaka Smith gets a lot of unnecessary hate. I think the fact that he was the top tackler this weekend shows you the work he does that goes under the radar. But I think people are expecting to see this X-Factor sevens player, making breaks, stepping play and stuff like that. But he's incredibly important for our defense. New Zealand will struggle with our physical approach and defense. They did it against England and Argentina. And Huckler says, I'd just love if we could somehow win enough games against the All Blacks so that we can have 50% wins each like it was in the past. Would add to the derby that SA versus All Blacks is already. Talking about Wales, I got my tickets booked for November to see the Box. Yeah, I mean, you're not the only one. I think it was as nice and sleazy and around here. Australia's got tickets for that. So very, very jealous about that. We're going to call it there, people. We've been going for well over an hour. I could probably go for another hour. But we're going to call it there. I'll be back with you guys tomorrow night, where we'll probably be talking about what we might see on Tuesday. I'll try and see if I can get somebody to jump on here as well, and we can have a bit of a chat of the changes we'd like to see and sort of predict it. We'll also be live on Tuesday itself. We can talk about the team that's been selected. We'll go live on Thursday as well, talk about a little bit of a sort of a look ahead to the weekend. But this weekend, I will not be doing the live watch-along with you, but we will have a live watch-along. It will be Lacanio, so I'm hoping that you guys will give him as much support as you've given me and try and pack the comments and have a really good one. I'm taking the weekend off. I know it's a bit of a cardinal sin, but I'm actually gonna sit down and have a beer with my mates and enjoy a rugby game without having to tell you guys what's going on. And I love doing it. It will be nice to do something a bit different. So I won't be with you guys this weekend. But in lieu of that, I'll be with you pretty much every day this week, bar Wednesday. So see you guys in a day. Keep well. Smash a like on the video because we've got just 43. We can get over 50. Quickly go and pump that up. Let's keep going, shall we? Quas, thank you so much for the donation. I really, really appreciate that. See you guys tomorrow. Let's have a fantastic week. Let's stay positive, people. You guys are really positive. I really like that about you. And yeah, we'll see you guys tomorrow.